You know it, sing it out. Come on. Hey, hey. We sing. Sing, whoa, There's a song that stirs the spirit, and it calls the heart to life. It's an anthem in the making. Can you feel it start to rise? Can you hear the generations get louder over time? Every son and every daughter singing out into the night. Come on! It's not time to be silent. Don't you dare hide your light. There's a world outside your window, so don't let it pass you by. Lift your hands to the heavens, lift your voice to the sky. Praise the Lord of all creation, let his name be. Come on, you sing, sing, Put your hands together. From the famous to the faceless, from the palace to the streets, I can hear that drum beat pulsing, and it's calling you and me. I can hear the world awaken. Oh, the sound is heavenly. Every tribe and every nation singing, Jesus, I believe. Come on, it's not time to be silent. Don't you dare hide your light. There's a world outside your window, so don't let it pass you by. Lift your hands to the heavens, lift your voice to the sky. Praise the Lord of, oh, let his name be lifted. Lift it high, come on. We sing it, Come on, you sing. See the world light up, one heart at a time. See the strongholds break in the blink of an eye. Feel it all our sin, nowhere inside. For the Lord, he is alive. See the strongholds break in the blink of an eye. Never seen such death in all our sin, nowhere inside. For the Lord, he is alive. See the lost return from the dead of the night. Every captive free, every chain left behind. Have you ever seen such a beautiful sight? All the world, come on. See the strongholds break in the blink of an eye. Every chain left behind. Have you ever seen such a beautiful sight? All the world coming alive, singing, whoa, 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 loud, hey, hey, hey. We praise you, Lord.
All right, let's get our hands together. Let's lift this up. Oh, my soul, it overflows at the power of your love. Bones awaken, graves are breaking. Death defeated. one voice, let's sing this high. My soul will sing glory to Jesus, my Savior, my God, my King. Honor and power forever. No, I won't let rocks give the praise you deserve. Oh, I won't stay silent till heaven meets earth. My soul will sing glory to Jesus. Oh, come on. Oh, my soul has found a friend who surely died but rose again. I'll shout aloud my joyful sound. Oh, I'll bow my head and cast my crown. Yeah, my soul lift it up, glory to Jesus. He's my God and my King. Honor and power forever. No, I won't let the rocks give the praise. Oh, I won't stay silent till heaven meets earth. My soul will sing glory to Jesus. Oh, He's worthy, so worthy of our praise. Come on, let's sing it out. For all you've done, for all you're doing, for all to come, I give you glory. For all you're doing, for all to come, we give him glory. For all you've done, for all you're doing, for all to come, I give you glory. For all you've done, for all you're doing, and for all to come, I give, come on, I give you glory. My soul, sing it out, glory to Jesus. He's my God and my King. Honor and power forever. My soul, oh, glory to Jesus. He's my God and my King. Honor and power forever. No, I won't let the rocks give the praise. Oh, I won't stay silent till heaven meets earth. My soul will sing glory to Jesus. Glory to Jesus.
Oh, sing this out. Christ is my firm foundation, the rock on which I stand when everything around me is shaking. No, I've never been more glad that I put my faith in Jesus. No, He's never let me down. He's faithful through generations. So why would He fail now? got peace that makes no sense, so I won't be going under. I'm not held by my own strength, 'cause I built my life on Jesus. No, He's never let me down. He's faithful in every season. So why would He fail now? He won't. Will you sing that in faith? No, He won't. He never has, He never will. He won't fail. He won't fail. Christ is my firm foundation, the rock on which I stand when everything around me is shaking. No, I've never been more glad that I put my faith in Jesus. No, He's never let me down. He's faithful through generations. So why would He fail now? He won't. He won't. If you believe, you sing. Come on. He won't fail. He won't fail. Jesus, we trust you. Listen, the rain came, wind blew. My house was built on you. Yeah, I'm safe with you. I'm gonna make it. Rain came, wind blew. My house was built on you. Yeah, I'm safe with you. I'm gonna make it. Come on, you sing the rain. Oh, rain came, wind blew. My house was, it was built on you. With you, I'm gonna make it. I'm gonna make it. I'm gonna make it through. 'Cause I'm standing strong on. Hey, I'm gonna make it through. Hey, my house was, let it rock. Christ is my firm foundation. Oh, the rock on which I stand when everything around me is shaking. No, I'm never that I put my faith in Jesus. No, He's never let me down. He's faithful through generations. So why would He fail now? He won't. No, He won't. You say He won't fail. No, He won't. He won't fail. He won't.
What's up, ARC family? My name is Matt Robinson, and I'm a grateful recovering alcoholic and drug addict, and I'm a pastor here at Southeast. I'm one of the pastors on staff in our SE recovery team, and man, we're just so thankful that we get a chance to be present with you on the weekends like this, and we don't take for granted that what a blessing it is for us as a team and for me as a person in long-term recovery to be able to continually talk about what God is doing in our life. And man, I just want you to know that our deepest desire is we just want to connect you with Jesus as a part of your long-term recovery. Realizing that every one of us comes into treatment with a different level or in a different place when it comes to our relationship with God or what we understand about God. And for so many of us, we come in with a whole host of probably negative experiences with church, the things done in the name of God or spoke on behalf of God that really aren't at the heart of who He is and what Jesus was about, and so we just don't take that lightly. We don't come in with a message of you need to do better to make God happier. We believe that we don't have to change so that God will love us. We believe that God loves us, and that's how we get to change. And so we really just want to connect you with Jesus as a part of your long-term recovery. And so if it's hard for you to be in a church setting, because I realize that the centers, they probably said, hey, you can go to church, just go sit. And even if it's, just see if you can get something out of it, might be the message they give. And we respect that so much and so grateful for that. Man, just know that like the reality for us is kind of a foundation is like what the big book says about God, that we believe God doesn't make too hard of terms for those that seek Him. And so, if you're here this weekend and you're watching this message, just know that our desire is to unpack like our experiences and what we found in our relationship with Jesus, in my own recovery, and to bring that to you. And so that's what we want to do today. So if you would, let's have a word of prayer and we'll get started. God, thank you that you're a God that cares. Thank you, Father, that you're a God who the response to the frail nature of us as humans or the broken nature of us as humans was not to sit in a judgment seat and demand a better performance, but your response to us was to enter into this struggle with us. And your son Jesus lived life, and God, we get to be in a spot where we have a person that goes between us and you who is not unable to sympathize with us in our weaknesses. And God, that's just such a profound truth for us. And so, Father, I pray right now for this message. I pray for every client that's listening to this message this weekend that it would not be about communicating a specific set of material or information, God, but this would be something that you use to carry the message deeper into their heart of how much you love them, how much you want them, a relationship with them, and how much they don't have to perform. They don't have to perform in a way to make themselves appealing to you because of Jesus. And so, Father, I just pray for this time, and I pray for everybody that's listening right now, God, that this time that they're in treatment, that this be a time where they connect with you on a deeper level, maybe for the first time in this journey of recovery, but definitely on a deeper level from where they were when they came. So, God, thank you for Jesus, and just please, Lord, bless our time in your word. Amen. I was thinking about the word paradox, and the word paradox it means, because you've been around the recovery rooms very long at all, like you've heard about the paradoxes, right? And what that paradox word means. And the definition of paradox is a seemingly absurd statement that when investigated is proven to be true. Now, when I read that, like I'm a child of the 80s, and I love older movies, and the movie that popped in my head when I read that definition of paradox was the movie Top Gun, and I'm not the new Maverick Top Gun, which was great as well, but I'm talking about the original Top Gun, because there's a scene in that movie where Maverick's in a dogfight. It's after Goose has died, and I'm one of those dudes, like I still have to fast forward when Goose dies. I can't. I yell at the TV, don't pull the lever. But it's after Goose has died, and he's in a dogfight, and this other airplane's chasing him. And as he's going, he starts to go slower, and the co-pilot with him says, "Maverick, you're slowing down. What are you doing?" He said, "I'm gonna bring him in closer." And the guy's response, his co-pilot's response, is really what sums up what I feel about a paradox, because his response is like, "You're gonna do what?" And it's like, because it just doesn't make sense at all if you're in a dogfight in an airplane that you want to bring the guy that's actively shooting at you, that you want to bring him in closer and you want to slow down to seemingly make yourself better to hit. Well, if you see the movie, you know he does this thing, and I don't know if it's real or not. I don't care if it's real. It was really cool. You know, I don't need movies to be real. I need them to be entertaining. And he does this thing and goes by and he gets the bad guy, which is how movies are supposed to end. But like that response when he says, I'm going to bring him in closer, that guy says, you're going to do what? That's what happens to me when I think about the paradoxes. And if you've been in the recovery rooms, you've heard those paradoxes, right? Like there's one is we got to give it away to keep. And giving away and keeping don't seem to go together, and it doesn't make much sense. But it's definitely when you, like the definition says, when you investigate those things, they are proven to be true. You know, we suffer to get well. We don't put suffering and wellness or wholeness together, but it's something we investigate that we find that to be true. We die to live, and death and life together, like that those don't seem to go together. But we know in our life and in recovery, like what that looks like. You know, the one I want to unpack a little bit today is that, man, we surrender to win. We surrender to win. And if there's a paradox statement for me that was so hard to grasp, but there's a paradoxical statement in my recovery that sums up just what it was like for me to struggle in my active addiction, the cycle of that for over 20 years, even as a pastor, walking with people with God, like trying to preach, trying to love my family, trying to be a good husband. If there's ever a statement that lands at why that was so hard, it's me understanding or me unpacking or seeing that in my life, that surrender to win. You know, I found since I've been trying to stay sober that I need to connect myself to different things. I call them anchors. You know, so I do specific things. They're anchors for me that even if I don't feel like doing them, I've learned that motivation and discipline are two different things. Like, you know, motivation is a feeling. Discipline is more of a decision. My motivation changes a lot. I can be super motivated to go to the gym and work out, and then within 18 hours can be super motivated to just destroy some gravy and biscuits at a Golden Corral and not miss a beat. My motivation shifts a lot, but man, the discipline of recovery, I've had to find some things to anchor to, and one of the things I've anchored to for my physical health is I started training Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu, and if you watch MMA, you're a combat sports enthusiast, or familiar with MMA, you've heard Jiu-Jitsu. It's a submission grappling art, and it's where two guys are in a wrestling match or a grappling match, and you're trying to find ways to manipulate movements, and you're trying to submit them. And to submit them, you've got to put them in a spot where they can't move a body part because it hurts, and so they'll tap out, or you try to get them in a part where you can restrict blood flow to their brain or something like that, so that they tap out, that they submit. And so, like, understanding this paradox of surrender to win, like I trained jiu-jitsu, and it's like when you tap out or you submit or you surrender, you lose. And so the paradox for me and understanding that in my life and recovery was that surrender to win was something that was so hard for me to grasp, that I have to tap out to win. You know, it just doesn't seem right to me to give up to win. But in Proverbs 14:12, it tells us there's a way that seems right to a man, but in the end, that leads to death. You know, when I started walking with my sponsor, he told me I really didn't have an alcohol and drug problem. I had a sober problem. I had a living life on life's terms problems. Because the cycle for me is I could hold it together for a while and things would be going really, really well. And then the pressure or the impact or the stress of whatever was going on in my life that time, you know, just normal things. It extended all the way from just trying to get out of college, to get a job, to having a wife, to having kids, to moving states, to changing jobs. Like whatever was coming at me, like I could hold it together for a little while, but then inevitably the stress or the pressure that I would put on myself or my self-imposed expectations would weigh me down or would wear me out, then I would start looking for some type of a mental escape. And I never intended for it to get to a place where it got every single time. That was one of the first truths I learned about addiction for me, is it gets worse, never better. Like that, the amount of time that I could go between when I had to reach for something to change the way I felt or to alter the stress that I felt internally, the time in between those binges kept getting smaller and smaller and smaller. And the amount that I had to consume or take kept getting bigger and bigger and bigger. And what my sponsor helped me understand was that it wasn't that I had a problem with drugs and alcohol. I had a problem with life. I had a problem living. There was a way that seemed right to me, and I was on that path, and I would work at it, and things would be going good. And then I would get to this place of the pressure cooker would reach the point that I would start looking for something. And I would always say, like, I'm just going to get a little bit. I don't want to have a lot. I don't need a lot. I just need a little bit. And inevitably, that little bit, by the time I got to the drive-thru at the liquor store, I'd already talked myself into more. Or that like when I went to the pill cabinet at my parents' house, I was only going to take a couple of those. But when I opened the bottle, I always grabbed more. It was never enough. There was a way that seemed right to me. There was a way that seemed like this how it ought to go. There was a plan that I had in my head of what I felt like I needed to be doing, but it landed me in the same spot every single time. And the outside consequences would get tense. Like all of a sudden I would get busted doing something, or I would get caught, or it would get to a point where I couldn't hide it or couldn't conceal it anymore, because that was a big part of my addiction, was I had to hide that from everybody. I didn't want anybody to know. I was a guy I never wanted out of my life. I just wanted to be able to function in my life. And so like I didn't want to stay out or run around. I just wanted to be able to get something to change the way I felt, and then participate, in my life. And the reality was, though, that when those outside consequences or when those outside circumstances, like the pressure from the outside changed, it was crazy to me to look back at now how much my motivation in recovery changed. It's like when I wasn't getting the pressure that I was getting. And I know we talk about like getting your paper signed, and the only reason you go to meetings is because you have to. And for some of us right now that are in this room, like the only reason you're in treatment is because Casey Law is making you be there, or that you're at the DOC and you get a chance to come here. It's versus stay in jail, or do you get to come here and do this instead of go to jail? And so that motivation, that outside motivation is there, and it kind of keeps that in there. But like, man, for me, when the outside consequences like lightened up, my motivation to stay involved in a healthy lifestyle seemed to go down too. And I had a way that seemed right to me, but in the end, it led to destruction, damaged relationships, lost relationships, impacted job performance, lost jobs, watching my kids be scared of me. My way of thinking, what I thought was right, landed me there. When I first came in 12-step recovery rooms, I looked for all the differences. I would listen to people share their stories, and I would think, man, like I'm not that bad. Maybe I'm not an addict. But I did. I started reading through the big book. And I remember the first time I was reading through the big book, even as I had doubts that I really was an alcoholic and an addict, I can remember reading this stuff on page 60 and 61 that really resonated with me, because I felt like this was describing my life. On page 60, it says this: the first requirement for us is that we be convinced that any life run on self-will can hardly be a success. On that basis, we're almost always in collision with something or somebody, even though our motives are good. Most people try to live by self-propulsion. Each person, like an actor who wants to run the whole show, is forever trying to arrange the lights, the ballet, the scenery, and the rest of the players in his own way. If his arrangements would only stay put, If only people would do as he wished, the show would be great. Man, that breakdown is a description of my life. That if everything would just go like I wanted it to, or if everything would just happen in a way that I felt like was the best plan that was out there, everything would be great. If the work stuff would just go right, if my family stuff would just, if these things would happen, everything would be good. And if everything would just go as I had planned, everything would be fine. And what I realized is that that never happened. It never went as I planned. Nothing ever came off like I thought it should. There was always something that didn't go just like I wanted to, and that became the primary foundational excuse for me, or reasoning behind, or justification, if you want to use that word, behind me turning to a substance to alter how I felt. I want to ask you a question, because the reality, though, for where you are right now, and this is an opportunity for honest reflection for you. If you pick the top one or two things in your life that are causing you the most stress or tension or anxiety, if you think about what those one or two things are right now in your life, how much of the tension or anxiety that you're feeling is really because you're still trying to run the show? How much of the fight that you're internally battling is because you still have an expectation of how this should turn out? And it could be something huge, right? Like it could be a really big deal. You could have right now a relationship issue going on that is a significant change, that if this relationship is not restored, that it'll be a very painful thing for you. And so it can be something big like that. It can be big, like maybe you've got a court case that's coming up that you're not sure how that's going to go, and you feel a tension and an anxiety towards that. It could be something even not that. It could be something not big. Right now, like I know when I'm around you guys at the centers, I hear about the different fusses or arguments or things that make us mad. It could be something small, like an interaction with somebody that's in our room, or somebody that's sharing a bunk with us. But how much of whatever tension or anxiety that you're feeling is because you have an expectation of how this is supposed to go, and what's happening right now is either possibly not going to add up to what you wanted, or it's not adding up, like it's not going like you think it ought to go. Man, that was me. And that paradox of surrender to win is one that as I figure out how to walk in recovery, and I figure out how to live life on life's terms, to take whatever happens as what's going to happen. Surrendering really has equaled winning in my life. Because I had no option at peace or serenity. I had no chance at experiencing any type of joy in my life if I was constantly, like the big book says, trying to run every single thing and make sure everything was going a certain way. That my anxiety that I was feeling in those cycled times of my life was not because of the circumstances that were going on around me, but because of the expectations that I had on those situations. Figuring out a way to surrender, figuring out a way to submit, figuring out a way to tap out is the way, man, that I have started living a quality of life that I did not know I could have. I did not know that I could be at peace with myself. I did not know that I could perform something at work, and if it didn't go good, that it didn't mean that all of a sudden that my value as a human, or my value, my place, or my people's desire, like that it was going to be diminished. I didn't know that I could if I do something wrong to somebody, that I can just find them and promptly admit that and be like, man, I'm sorry, that was my bad. I didn't know I could be at peace with myself, and I could be at peace with other people. And I'm able to walk in that now by surrendering, by tapping out. You know, my initial tap out moment came when I was sitting in a detox unit in downtown Louisville. You know, my way of thinking had landed me in a spot that I was on that park bench that you probably, if you've watched our spiritual life curriculum videos, discipleship curriculum, you've heard that story. If you heard my story before, there's a park bench on the corner of Central and 3rd. 5 weeks after launching a campus here at Southeast, I was blacked out sitting on that bench. And when I came to the next morning in that detox center, I was completely broke. I felt like my life was over. I didn't know if I could go home. Sure, I'd lost my job. The only thing I'd ever done, the only thing I was qualified to do. And I felt like my life was over. And you may have heard that, like, that God can, you know, we believe that at church. We believe that here. We don't believe God doesn't make too hard of terms for those that seek Him. And initially, when I started this journey of recovery and faith, like my faith in recovery, the God for me really was that gift of desperation. That's all I knew was my way was broke. And I came to that point to when you know, step 3 says, I turn my will and my life over to the care of God. Like the principle in CR, the Celebrate Recovery, principle 3 says, we consciously choose to commit all of my life and will to Christ's care and control. Like that initial moment for me was, I'm broke. My way of trying to run the show is not working. And I think if you're honest with yourself right now, whatever experience that you're having, tension, anxiety, or maybe the reason that you've landed in treatment right now is because you've been trying to run the show, like you've been trying to make sure everything goes just like you want it to, and it doesn't. And so maybe this is a surrender. Maybe this is that broke moment for you. Maybe God for you right now really can be that gift of desperation. Maybe you've come to that moment where I can't do this anymore. I can't function like this anymore. And it's a moment of surrender. But what I've also been learning in my recovery is that moment of surrender is not just a one-time thing. It's not that I hit that thing and I've made a consciously chose to commit all my life and my will to Christ's care and His control, that it wasn't a one-time thing, that it's like I have to consistently do that. There's a devotion book called Experiencing God. It's by a guy named Henry Blackaby. And he has one in there, and he talks about the devotion from Romans. The verse that he's talking about is in Romans 12, where it says to offer your body as a living sacrifice to God. And the point he makes in that devotion is that the problem with living sacrifices is that we keep crawling off the altar. That me making one-time decision to give my will and my life over to God has not been something to the care of and control of Christ, has not been a one-time thing that I've been able to do. It's something that I have to do multiple times a day. And I find encouragement in Scripture as that I have to do that because, you know, Paul says in Philippians, I think, to work out your salvation with fear and much trembling. Now, working out there, that in the Greek, that doesn't mean like you get a lawyer so you can work out your charges or you get somebody to work out the deal between you and a judge. That word work out is more like, it's like really like working out. And if you got experience in the gym and you go to a gym, you know that when you work out, it's something that you have to do. Like you have to do that. It's the breaking down. And for me, that is the work of my recovery because the spiritual life is not a theory. We have to live it. I heard somebody say in a meeting this week, he said, you know, if there's 3 frogs sitting on a lily pad and one of those frogs makes a decision to jump off that lily pad, how many frogs are on the lily pad? And if I say it slow, you probably think, well, there's 3 there. But if you're not thinking, you can take 2. He made a decision. Making a decision has nothing to do with taking the action. Making the decision is just the beginning of what it is. And so for me, when I take my will from God, I try every morning to give my will to God. God, I give my life over to you. I cannot manage it. I am powerless over people, places, and circumstances. I have to give my life over to you. And then shortly, whenever I realize that when that it is, sometimes it's very shortly, sometimes it's hectic and busy, and I don't realize I've taken my will back until I can look at how I'm feeling, if I'm anxious or I'm frustrated or things are bothering me more than they normally do, that I realize, okay, you know what's happened? Man, I've taken my will back. And that's those moments when I realize I've got to push that back out because I'm working that out. So if I give it to God and I take it back and I realize that I push it back, and if I take it back and when I realize that I push it back, that is me working out salvation, like Paul said in Philippians, which is a word for life, that we work it out and we give that back and forth. So there's definitely a one-time decision, or hopefully a moment of clarity for you that you've been trying to run the show and it doesn't work. It hasn't worked. And this isn't me telling you what's going on in your life. This is like you taking inventory or taking stock of your life. How is it working out for you? How is you making the call in things? How is you trying to fix and manage and control the things going on in your relationships? How is that working out for you? Like how is it working out for you where you're trying to get everything to go just like you think it should go? How is that working? Because for me, it was a 40-year-old man that had to go to treatment. When I was trying to run things, what happened for me is I was a 40-year-old man that spent 5 hours in a line to get a 15-minute phone call with my kids and my wife on Christmas. Like, that's where it got me. And so there's an initial moment of like, I'm broke, I can't do this. I'm turning it over. But there's also that daily, I've got to continue to give it to Him. And one of the things, man, I'll be honest with you all, that scares me when we do worship services in church, services in centers, when I see people get super excited about God, or they get like like emotionally charged about the living the Christian life. My fear is that you're feeling some motivation. But man, the work is to take that motivation and make it discipline. Where it moves from just me feeling really good in this service. Because look, man, if your relationship with God and your sobriety is anchored to you going to a worship service and feeling something inside of you, if that's what is going to anchor you to your recovery as a guy who's been a pastor for 20 years, that motivation wanes. I try to be super transparent with the guys that I sponsor that, like, you know what, man, I got up this morning and I didn't want to do the deal. I didn't want to pray. I didn't want to do my meditations. I don't want to eat healthy. I don't want to make good physical choices. I don't want to do it. There's something that's constantly inside of me that is a struggle and a battle that Paul talked about in Romans 7, and it lays out there in Galatians 5 how that there's the desires of the flesh and the desire of the Spirit for our life war against each other. And so if your anchor to recovery or your anchor to God in your recovery is centered on something that makes you feel good, that terrifies me for you. Find some way to connect with God every single day. That's the only way I've found that I can stay remotely serene, and it's the only way in this season of my life that I found I can stay sober. You know, and even great-hearted people, my church has invested in me and loved me when my performance was horrible. And that's the goodness of God, because I didn't expect to get good when I had done wrong. But so many people that don't walk in this life of recovery, they either ask flat out, or they kind of ask, and what they're really asking is like, Matt, you're good now, right? I've heard people say, you got this alcohol thing beat now, right? And as much as I want to honor their investment in me, and I want to be able to say, yeah, man, I'm good to go, everything's great now, man, I can't. The only thing that I can say is that if I wake up in the morning and I have a personal determined connection with God, I'm confident I'll stay sober today. Now, tomorrow is tomorrow. And if I don't get up tomorrow and I don't find a way to connect with God, in some ways I connect with God as being in nature. Sometimes the way I connect with God is reading His Word. Sometimes the ways I connect with God, a big way I connect with God is being in fellowship with other people. It's crazy to me how much God uses other people in my life to speak. How many messages that He brings me through the fellowship and community of people that I have in recovery. That this surrender to win is something that takes more than motivation. It takes discipline. And discipline is all about a decision. As much as step 3, or as much as this surrender to win, as much as this learning and knowing that my way does not lead to the life that I want, is a daily work, and I don't get it right. It's a constant work. The only thing that I have to get 100% on, the only thing that I have to make sure that I get right, is the knowledge that if I don't connect with God, if I don't get outside direction for my life, if I don't find something that is bigger and stronger than the things of this world, my chances at sobriety disappear. Move from motivation to decision. Find anchors that will pull you into something, that will anchor, that will lock you into something, so that when things happen and when things move, that you can stay connected there. And know that the only thing you have to get 100% on is that admission that my life is unmanageable and I can't do this without God.